Hey YouTube, I've got this Honda Talon here and I've put on a rough country winch mount and then the Harbor Freight 5500 synthetic line wide spool winch, which seems to be a popular combination, a fairly affordable winch, and seems to have a decent reputation. In the past I've mainly run Warren, but man, they're pricey. Anyway, I wanted to share a few thoughts on the installation I hadn't really seen other people go over. And these, maybe I over-explain, but these are kind of designed for somebody that hasn't done something like this before. So the first thing they have you do is pull that bolt. These two bolts, the upper two ones are longer and they go into captured nuts. And then down in here in each corner you see a little plastic push rivet. If you haven't used the Honda ones, they have a little center section you pull back, and that's what spreads the underside of it to hold it in place. You pull that center pin back and then pull out the rivet, and that allows you to pull off this bumper with its two legs there. The next step they have you do is bolt the winch onto the mount plate. The winch came with square nuts inside the winch already, and bolts and lock washers to install it onto a mount plate. Then they have you support the machine with some jacks, take off this upper, they have like a shoulder bolt and a nut on the upper forward A-arm pivot here, and slide in a longer bolt with a washer, leave them sticking out, and then you slap the winch and the mount plate on there. So on mine, I've seen people online that had it fit like a glove, and on mine the holes were a little bit narrow. So I'm not sure if Honda frames come in a couple different places or if there was some other deal there, but talked to the people at Rough Country. They actually had me send them some pictures. Anyway, in my case, I used a die grinder to clean it up a little bit, and I'll probably put in a couple of still shots of what I'm talking about how I didn't want to line up at first. So in any event, I'd recommend waiting to mount the winch on there and test fit that plate, because if you have to do a little adjusting, it's nice to test fit it without the weight of the winch and kind of jiggling it around to get it lined up. So once the winch is on the mount plate, these two little brackets go around that front frame piece. You see there's a little spacer that goes across the bottom of the mount plate there, and it has all four holes that line up with the two bolts of each side on these clamps. There's a left and a right clamp. They have a notch cut in them for driver's side and I think two for passenger side, but that's in the directions and pretty clear. It's a bugger to get it in there, but got that tightened up with Loctite and got that tightened up, and that's pretty much the physical installation of the winch and the mount plate. Then up here on the ferrule head, they have you go back an inch, I think, from the front tube. I found, and this is pretty thin metal, so they give you a pretty large square plate to go underneath, I think, to spread the load. So what I did is I'd put that square piece right up against the front tube, or against the weld bead there, and mark the center of it, and then I used a square to transfer that same length from the end to the top to mark a hole on the top. And I did use a drill press. I was able to kind of kick my tool bed on a benchtop drill press over to clamp this down and drill through the bumper there to make sure that I got it square. Knowing me, I'd get it off a little bit, and then every time I look at it for the next however many years I own this thing, it would drive me nuts. So the Harbor Freight winch came with the Badland ferrule head there, and the cap screws, Allen cap screws, and lock nuts to mount that up, and that's pretty simple. But having this that far forward meant it just barely fits there without having to trim any of the grill from the machine. So there's the physical mount. Now the Badland winch came with a battery disconnect. Looking on forums and stuff, a lot of people don't install it, but I saw one person posted that the solenoid actually stuck. So even though he had it shut, keyed off or whatever, and no power to the coils, it continued to run the winch until it crumpled the bumper part there and then burned itself up. So I didn't really find a good place to put this battery disconnect. I could have made, they give you a couple of short positive cables. I could have made some more, and I could have stuck it right there. I wasn't really sure I wanted to do that. Then it dawned on me I actually have a brand new Warren contactor from some other project. I think maybe something got damaged and frayed or something. I don't remember. Like the wireless receiver was bad or whatever, and I got sent the entire control package, including the contactor relay. So I had that laying just around brand new. And of course they're quite reliable, so I feel better about not using that. I should back up for a minute here. Again, gearing these to people that haven't done this before. Once you've got the hood off, this rubber mud flap here secures with some of those push clips, and then has hooks here that are kind of slots, I guess, that hook over tabs on the upper dash cover. And then the upper dash cover has looks like 3 shouldered I think 10mm bolts, and then the ones that are visible, it has some black Allen, I think they're like a 4mm Allen bolt with a shoulder that secures this upper dash on here. Like here and there and here and here and there. And that gets you access in here. And they have a 12-volt cable running back to the battery installed from the factory that has blue tape on the end of it, and it'll just be tucked up in here. I think they actually zip tied it. And oh yeah, right there. See that clipped tie? That was where they'd secured it from the factory. There's also this blue keyed on power connector, which I intended to use. I ordered a key on power connector for the Honda Talon and the Pioneer, and got it when, man, that's a completely different plug. Well, the plug I ordered actually was intended to, up in there is the, you can kind of see it right there that I'm pointing at, is the socket for the 12-volt accessories. And the thing that Amazon sent is designed to unplug that, and it has a Y, plugs into the accessory socket and into the wiring harness. So yeah, I mean, it came with a nice loom on the wiring, and so I just ran that over here, that red wire there where you see the loom stops, and that's my key on. Eventually here I'll put in a like a 50 amp relay with studs on it to be powered off this other key on source, and I'll run a jumper over to the 12-volt hot lead on the contactor there, and then I've got a Blue Sea system fuse box. I'm not an ATC fuse holder. I'm not a big fan of some of the super cheap Amazon fuses or fuse holders, so I spent a few bucks to if you get something from Blue Sea Systems or from Victron or Little Fuse or any of those companies, you'll get something that will last and won't overheat, and etc., etc. Anyway, where was I? Oh, so they have a spot to mount the very expensive Warren winch package that Honda sells, I cut this piece of aluminum here and mounted my contactor down there, and I bolted it to the factory spot there. I cut a hole through it there to mount the socket there for the they give you I think I threw it in the glove box already. They give you a corded remote for this, which I don't intend to use. I bought the wireless control kit, and so that's the receiver that just plugs into that receptacle. From there, you've got, your yellow and blue wires to the winch. Black negative, I just ran up here to the factory ground, used the factory positive wire, and whenever I decide to install a winch or do a solar system or something like that, Nancy Pelosi's husband buys stock in a zip tie company, and somehow they just totally get rich. But I ran along under the frame here, down that frame piece. Naturally, you end up with lots of extra battery cable. But I cut them off, and I like to use the closed end, nice heavy duty lugs, preferably plated, with marine grade adhesive sealant heat shrink, and then I used the rubber terminal protectors that came with the winch. So nice, secure, weather tight connections down there. Oh, and I should mention the you can reach right into the switch panel there. And you can see the little blank right there. You can just reach in and squeeze those ears. And it took a little bit of shaving. I'd recommend heating a utility knife with a torch. Yeah, you can cut it with a cold knife, but it's easy to slice too much or whatever just because it's so stiff. But if you use a hot knife, you can kind of get a nice snug fit. So there's the manual winch switch. I think I've got both the wired remote and the wireless in the glove box, but that ends up working well. And then back here, naturally, at the battery box, you don't want a 6-gauge hot wire flopping around in the dash. So this wire was zip tied to the back of the box there. I thought I could just pull it down. It was taped up with blue tape up behind the starter solenoid there. A couple of, looks like 440 amp fuses are in here. Anyway, I went in to reach in there, cut that off that zip tie and put it here. And I'll probably trim this terminal protector just a little bit so that it fits better. I found it easier to just remove the battery entirely to get those on there. So anyway, yeah, winch works great. I definitely recommend getting some 6-gauge bare wire lugs that are plated for the terminal size of whatever winch and contactor you're using, and that way you can shorten up cables. This multi-wire harness that the remote socket and the dash switch and all that plug in, I didn't really feel like cutting down, so it is zip tied there. But be sure and zip tie the heck out of everything, and that's how you get things that don't chafe through. And if you can, keep them off of sharp edges and make sure that they can't move. Particularly, of course, the wire to the battery. And that's it. Now I just need to put everything back, and I should be good to go. Hope this is helpful for somebody. Thank you.